Welcome to a new episode of the Spanish Performance Podcast. For the regular listeners that listen to this podcast in Spanish all the time, this is going to be the first English episode we're going to be doing. So if you don't understand a lot of the terms that we're going to be talking about, you can go on YouTube and there's going to be subtitles there for you. In today's episode, we got Jake Tuura. We're going to be talking about tendons, but Jake and I go way back from the time that I quit playing college basketball and I started just going into strength and conditioning. He was one of the reasons why. He's always been one of my mentors. But this is going to be a podcast that is going to talk only about tendons. This is the most in-depth that I ever got into tendons. We've talked about the theory of tendons, which is something that Jake is very knowledgeable in. But I also ask a bunch of questions when it comes to the practical application. We've gone through the ideas of if there's a difference between yielding and overcoming isometrics to treating tendinopathies, why isometrics are superior to other types of exercises or why they're not. We've talked about the application, the practical application during season, off season, how that can affect different type of players. We've also talked about the difference in duration of the isometrics and how that's going to affect the treatment of tendinopathy. So if this is the first time on the Spanish Performance Podcast for you, go check out social media at Spanish Performance. We're going to be posting some English stuff, shorts of the new episodes that we're going to be having in English. There's going to be a bunch of Spanish stuff, so sorry about that. And remember that you can see these, you can watch this on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube as well. So check it out, and let's go to the episode.
Welcome, Jake, to the podcast, Spanish Performance. Actually, this is not the first. I did one in 2020 with Lucas Viller, strength coach. He's in the G League now. But you're the second big English podcast. How you feeling?
Good. Well, was your first mentor, so I deserve it.
Yeah, the main guy. For whoever's here watching this or listening to this, me and Jake go way back when I was at University of Wisconsin Superior. I was supposed to play basketball. Then I saw Jake and I was like, nah, I want to be like that. Nah, but since then, Jake's taught me a ton of stuff. And nobody better than you to start. If you want to I already did an introduction of you, but tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do now.
Oh, okay, yeah. So now I pretty much just research tendons of my own, read everything I can, and I guess work with people. A lot of it is jumper's knee, patellar tendon pain, but then that goes to Achilles tendon pain is very similar. And then it pertains to every other tendon issue. And then if you have good tendon rehab, that pertains to every other musculoskeletal issue as well. It's just progressive loading as the pain symptoms allow you. That's as simple as mostly all pains are. I guess I started as a strength coach. Yeah, when we met, I was all into strength and conditioning. I had a decade of working with high school and then D3, D2, D1. And throughout that time, I just lost the love for it and realized there's a science in tendons. Once I found Keith Barr and Jill Cook, and then I started doing podcasts with these people. And I started putting out information on tendons, and I got a ton of feedback from strength coaches because I was in the strength coach world. A ton of feedback, and I'm feeling like I'm the only guy looking into this as a strength coach. I could probably say that. Actually, I could say that, yeah, as a strength and conditioning coach, I was the only guy looking into this. It was just a curiosity that was natural to me. Now it's been like 5 years of doing podcasts, reading as much research as I can, releasing a couple protocols for jumper's knee, one for science, one for training, and then just helping people troubleshoot their tendon pains through consultations. Sometimes I'll do stuff in person, very rarely. The other day I actually saw an Achilles rupture. It was at LA Fitness. A guy tore his Achilles tendon. I've never seen one in person. You heard the gunshot and everything. So yeah, he got surgery. So anyways, that's pretty much my whole life is just the one thing I care. I don't care about strength much anymore. Strength and conditioning, hypertrophy, that stuff is all pretty basic to me, and it's boring. It's the tendons that are fascinating to me. I guess we'll get into all the confusion. Everything that I believe for tendons, I have a counterpoint that I also believe because the research is all over the place and the science and the framework, the understanding of tendons, just all over the place. So I hope at some point it can be more understandable, but right now it's kind of, you kind of go based off of the experience that you see. You have to go Muscles, there's a lot of research, and bones, there's a lot of research that is very concrete and easy to understand, but tendons are just this middle guy where it's not like that. So
Why do you think that is? Why do you think is it harder
I don't
to
know. I
research
think
the tendon?
muscles are pretty well understood. Like muscles are pretty well understood. There's so much when you go to undergrad, you have so much education on muscle, like muscle physiology, the sliding filament theory, and actin and myosin, and there's so much stuff with muscles so much of education is with muscles, and then with bones, it's kind of like, yeah, it's this skeleton or your body moves. But you never hear anything about tendons. Just like tendons they'll say things like they're an inelastic structure, which they're not inelastic, but they'll say that, and they'll say they're a stiff transducer of load to transmit from muscle to bone, and like that's it, and you're done. But then when you run into a tendon issue, it's like, that education didn't help you, because now what do I do for my tendon? Why is it like that? I don't know. So recently there's a guy, I think his Instagram's old school strength coach or something. He was doing a trap bar deadlift. I tore my lat tendon. People listening, I tore my lat tendon 2 years ago doing a trap bar deadlift. Tore my lat tendon off the bone. I got surgery to put it back on the bone. Now it's good to go. This guy, he was trap bar deadlifting, and he tore it. It was in the UK, but he couldn't get quick medical service like I did in the States. I got an ultrasound as fast as I could to figure out what it was. He had to wait a lot of waiting, get an MRI. They thought it was a teres major. It came about that it was actually a tear of the muscle tendon unit. So the tendon bone was like a big piece still there. He had an injury to the muscle tendon, and the way he explained it, his surgeon explained it to him, which was so good, was if it is a tear of the bone tendon, it's pretty easy. You just take the tendon, it's white on white. The tendon's white, the bone is white. You just go white on white, you reattach it. If it's a tear of the tendon and the muscle, it's red on white. And that is not easy to put back together. Red on white. The muscle is really compliant and stretchy. The tendon is way more stiff than the muscle. So I don't know what this guy's doing. I think he's actually just leaving it alone. And he's doing fine. He's doing pull-ups, he's doing deadlifts, he's doing push-ups, he's doing everything, dips. He's doing fine because the shoulder is really redundant. You might not even need a lat. I don't know if that speaks to why is the science like that. I think it's just such a weird structure that you're connecting something so stretchy like a muscle to something so stiff like a bone, and that there's such weird mechanics of the tendon that it's not really well understood, because I don't know how you could. There's too much going on. And then also a lot of the tendons, they wrap around things, like the patellar tendon wraps around the patella. So it's like a lot of our understanding is the tendon is this strong rope. It's a strong, stiff rope that gets pulled on, but it's like, it's a rope that has to go around a bend. It goes around a bend. So like any ropes are not good at going around a bend. You need something like fluidy when it goes around a bend. So it's like you have more of a compressive region with fluid. So it's like most of our understanding is the tensile region of the tendon, where it gets pulled on in a straight line, but these tendons aren't getting pulled on in a straight line. They're going around a bend, and that's hard to research too. That's hard to research, the area of the tendon that goes around a bend. And when you talk about tendon pain, they all come about where the tendon is wrapping around a bone. The only exception is the mid portion of the Achilles. I think the Achilles is a different beast because it's just the longest tendon in the body, and it has this weird zone where it kind of rings out and twists. So yeah, I think hopefully that answers why tendons are kind of confusing. There's just a lot going on. There's not as much going on with muscles, and there's not as much going on with bones.
It's just simple to understand the muscles and the bones. I think it's just more complicated to get, like you said, there's too much going on with the tendon in order to really have a clear
exactly
answer.
And even like the Bill Hartman model, like expansion and compression of the muscle, maybe he would say of everything, but I look at it of the muscle, like eccentric and concentric expansion and compression. It's like it is super complex, and I still cannot grasp Bill's model, but I'm like, at the same time, like expansion, compression, I'm good to go. I understand the muscle expands and the muscle compresses. Like, there we go. And then, that might be all there is to it, like moving around fluids and stuff. So that is another layer of the muscle. But what does it speak to the tendon? It doesn't really speak to the tendon. And you have different mechanics. Like you talk about the tendon being stiff. But sometimes the tendon is not stiff and it's compliant and it kind of just extends. It's extendable. Sometimes it's very stiff. If you move very fast, the tendon stiffens up. It has to stiffen up. If you're in a cold state, your tendon is not as stiff. If you start to warm up, your tendon gets stiffer. There's so many things that change based off of a million different things. The biggest one is a healthy tendon versus an unhealthy tendon. All of our research is on healthy tendons. Our understanding of how tendons work is on healthy tendons. We don't have a good understanding of how unhealthy tendons work. So often we care about tendons when they're unhealthy, and then we look at research about healthy tendons and they're like, this is what's working with your tendon. I don't think that's what's going on. Your tendon could be working completely differently because it is unhealthy. And that's why I'm in a good spot, because I've worked with thousands of people to get out of tendon pain. So I really just go based off of my experience. I don't have to try to read a piece of research to figure out what's going on with the tendon. I'm just going to say, I've seen this 1,000 times. I think if you do this, it's going to make your tendon pain worse. So let's just do this. What's going on mechanistically? I don't really know, but I think you're going to be better off in the long run. I'm going to keep digging into the mechanism, but I don't know if I'll ever find it.
Yeah, I think that's the cool part is like practically there's very few things that you're going to discover that are new that are going to make you change the way you like approach those things, but you still want to know like what's going on behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, you're going to keep doing the same thing that you were doing maybe 2 years ago in respect to tendons, although you have changed your mind on some things of like long duration ISOs changing to short
I have,
duration
the
ISOs.
short. Yeah, the long and the short. Yeah, and it is. It's like going back. Like I wrote a vertical jump protocol, I don't know, a decade ago, maybe. And I had overcoming ISOs in there. And I just put them in for like potentiation. But now I'm looking at them like, that is one of the best ways to strain a tendon, to pull on a tendon and get an elongation out of the tendon, which if you look at adapting a tendon, you have to strain the tendon. It all depends on the strain of the tendon. So an overcoming ISO is a great thing to do that. At the time, I just didn't know. So it's like it's just coming back around and being like, now you have a new justification for why you do something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that changes the way maybe it doesn't change the way you do things, but it changes the way you approach it, or the reasoning behind when you do something. Sometimes it changes the approach. Like the other day I was talking about this, like angles, like how you train different angles and different positions and stuff. And some people does it with the purpose of improving performance. And we train on these angles because these are the angles that we run, or we change the direction on. Instead of being like, maybe it makes sense to train on those angles slowly because of what we know on how tissue behaves in terms of if you move fast or you move slow. That just like you were saying about tendons. But it's really not to perform better, but just to put those tissues on those angles, different positions, at just slower contractions and try to give the tissue a break or give them a different stimulus, right? So like already by having a different idea of what you're doing, you might be doing the same thing, but with different goals, and you might be doing it at a different time or with different people or for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can have a million justifications for things, but just to have an idea of fast and slow. And then with the tendon, and it probably pertains to everything, but being viscoelastic, how if you move fast, it's just yanking on the tendon, it's just getting a big stretch, and then it's recoiling back. But if you move slow, it's more viscous, and it's like the internal properties can kind of slide and rotate around one another. So if you have a really unhealthy tendon and you just do a lot of the fast elastic things, you're just yanking on the tendon, and the areas that are injured are just probably just getting shielded and maybe compressed. They're not getting loaded because they don't want to be loaded. They're not strong enough to be loaded. So if you do the slow things, it's like things can slide and rotate around one another, and now you can get a pull on the unhealthy areas. And yeah, if you have different angles, I still am trying to figure that out with tendons, because it's like, to get a good strain on a tendon, you need such a big muscular hit that if you start to, like a leg, for a patellar tendon, you do a leg extension, the quad is working so hard, but it's like, what if we want to get different angles and rotations of the knee and then try to do something? Now it's like, I don't know how much we're now able to pull on a tendon, but I guess variability is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the camps of like slow and fast, the slow is usually therapeutic. The fast you need for performance. But if you have a very unhealthy athlete with pain, or they have a compromised structure, more of the fast stuff, maybe not good. Maybe you could do more of the slow stuff for some therapeutic. And now you're getting into injury prevention, which is like, you're probably preventing injuries, but there's no way to track it. There's no way to track if it's doing anything or not.
Yeah. Yeah, but only the sole concept of fast and slow, I think is very, very helpful when it comes to like just performance overall. And then with athletes that they're just improving performance by being on the court. So try to be on the court as much as you can. And then when you get out of it, just try to do more slow stuff that might keep you healthier to be on the court more often. So you just get better.
Most have no clue about that. Playing ball at LA Fitness, basketball, the amount of guys I see that are like crazy gifted athletes who are like $150 and they're throwing down windmills in between the legs, and they do it on Monday and then you don't see them all week because their patellar tendon hurts, and they might come back next Monday and do it again. But it's like they get in pain after one day and they have no clue what to do because all they know is playing basketball. A basic understanding of the tendon being viscoelastic, that if your tendon, you need to get load through your tendon, especially if it's unhealthy. You probably need load every day or the majority of the days of the week. And your patellar tendon is only really getting significant load when you're playing basketball because that's all you know. So if you could get in a weight room and do heavy squats or heavy split squats or heavy leg extension, now you're loading your tendon 5 days a week. You're giving it a signal to heal and get stronger. But these basketball guys, if they just know basketball, that's all they know. And how many guys' careers have probably ended because all they know is basketball and they run into something like jumper's knee. They have no way out.
Yes, it's that it's a cool story too in terms of like a lot of strength coaches will be like, oh, you want to get faster, jump higher, blah, 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 and you start doing all these like crazy exercises for Olympic lifting, blah, blah, blah. But then you have these basketball players that the answer would be like, why'd you jump so high? Oh, I just jump a lot, play basketball a lot. And that's pretty much the answer that you need. But they don't know how to stay healthy. And that's by just doing something is when you realize what you need to do. It all comes to like, so one of the questions that I have is about early age and tendon development when you're from like 13, the age that a lot of people measure is 17 years old. But like there's examples of people I met that they've done track and field when they're young, right? When they're 13, 14, 15 years old, they do track and field, sprint events, triple jump, whatever. And their bounce by the time they're 20 is crazy, insane bounce. And the one thing they say is like, oh, well, I did track and field. I think I play basketball, and that's what it did it. And then the other thing they said is that, and a guy that's particularly super bouncy, super healthy too, never lifted a weight, but he also did track, but he stretched every day. That's the one thing he says. I stretch every day in the morning and at night, which at the end of the day is also like a slow contraction of the tendon, passive contraction, however you want to see it. But it's very significant. No tendinopathy, nothing. Bouncy, super bouncy, and super healthy. So it's like, what's there?
Yeah, I think you could. I wouldn't challenge that guy. I just leave him alone and be like, yeah, works for you. You know, go ahead. I don't want to put doubt in someone's head. But the problem I have, I'm totally okay with someone's anecdotes. Like, I am a crazy gifted bouncy athlete, never had tendon pain. It's because of stretching. I'm okay with that anecdote. I'm not. Yeah, sure. But if you want to go and prescribe this to 1,000 people and say you need to go do stretching and that's going to keep you healthy, like, please show me the mechanism of why that's happening. And they couldn't, because I don't think stretching. You say stretching is giving a slow load to the tendon. I don't think it does. I don't think static stretching does that. If you want to do a quad stretch or a calf, if you do a calf, let's take the Achilles tendon. You want to do a calf stretch on the wall. I don't think you're getting a load into the tendon in a way where the tendon is going to be getting stronger. I don't think it's doing that. I don't think it's doing that because, okay, let's just for the tendon to adapt to get stiffer and stronger, which is what you need. You need the tendon to be stiff. There's cells, there are billions, trillions of cells deep within the tendon that need to be pulled on. And it's hard to pull on them because they're so deep within the tendon. You can't just do a static stretch. If you do a static stretch, you'd think, oh, I'm pulling on the cells and they're kicking out more collagen, making the tendon stiffer. You need the muscle to work. You need the muscle to pull on the tendon, and that's what's really elongating the tendon. If you don't get the muscle to pull on the tendon, you're just going at like the end of a joint range. I just think you're stretching like maybe the sheath of the tendon, the outer sheath of the tendon, and the internal workings of the tendon are not getting pulled on. I think that's what's happening. The story of a person saying that they think that's having a significant benefit to the health of the tendon, I don't think that's true. They could just be an outlier. They could just be like, it should just be survivorship bias. This person lasted through many years of track, like jumping, playing basketball, and they didn't develop tendon pain. dude, there's so many people that do not get tendon pain, and I just leave them alone. And it's like, you're a great athlete. This is amazing, but you probably could not help someone in tendon pain because you've never experienced tendon pain and you never rehabbed people through tendon pain.
Yeah.
I'm a great dude to help people through tendon pain because I developed the tendon pain and I've been through it now like 10 times just based on my own stupidity. But because of that, I can help someone else. And also, if you talk about track and field, this is what, because me and you are not track and field guys. So I don't have a history of track and field. Wasn't even a strength coach with track and field. They are all about performance of the Achilles and their patella. They need performance of their Achilles and patella. If we play basketball, we can blow up our patellar tendon, and we're just going to find a way to compensate. We're not going to cut off our right side anymore if it hurts. We're going to shoot three-pointers instead of driving. We're going to box out and get better position instead of jumping and landing. We're going to find a way to compensate. If you're track and field, you can't compensate around a bad patellar tendon. So they naturally figure it out that they have to have good rest and recovery between sessions. So if you look at track and field, like they have good programs that don't develop tendinopathies. But if you take a basketball sport, like there's coaches that want to do mental toughness and run people into the ground, and then you want to go play 7 days a week, and maybe that's not the best thing for your patellar tendon. Track and field, are they doing mental toughness things that are stupid for their tissues like that? You don't see that. So yeah, having the background of track and field, I think those people are just set up better to understand rest and recovery between sessions. Basketball players, you don't know that. We just ball every day, and
there's a lot more skill involved into it, and then that's just do it nonstop. And what another question that comes with this is like, well, talking about the early age of tendons and development, is there such a thing as when you pass that age of where the tendon starts developing much slower, or those cells start kicking out collagen much slower? Is there a possibility that you pass a certain age, and if you have not developed any kind of tendinopathy in the past or during that early age, you might just not get it ever?
That's yeah, dude, that is the speculation with the patellar tendon. I did find these pieces of research, but they were just I thought they were going to be much better to read, and I would have some really good quotes, and I could put together like an Instagram post or something, but that did not happen because that research was not that exciting to me. But so the Achilles, this is a lot of Jill Cook's work, and then there was another lady she was with. But if you take Achilles and patellar, she'll say you can develop Achilles tendinopathy anytime in life. Anytime in life you can get Achilles tendinopathy. But the work she was finding was on jumper's knee, that before you get a tendon pain, you have to have pathology. So you have to have damage within your tendon. It has to be a structure that's compromised. And the work she was doing was, if you don't damage your patellar tendon let's take that time frame, if you don't damage it and cause structural harm to the patellar tendon, you will not cause that later in life. So it's almost like the pathology of the tendon was created when you're young by overloading it. And then later in life, you're already set up for it. But if you never did that in the first place, it's like you're not going to go get jumper's knee. That was what that work was suggesting. It was like small sample size. A lot of it was on dancers. But with the Achilles was like, you can just get that anytime in life. I don't know where I stand with that. They need to do more work on that because there was only a few studies on it. And I'm just of the camp. I'm like, dude, I think you could get jumper's knee anytime in life. If you really are stupid about jumping and playing ball and loading your patellar tendon, that thing can be as healthy as ever. You could have the best setup from 0 to 17 of a lot of activity and preparation and stuff. I think you could blow that thing up like any time in life. And if you really get to the point where you're jumping like 40 inches, 50 inches, you're pulling on that thing so hard that I'm like, I think you could definitely cause structural problems to the tendon, and then later on in life that could turn into pain. Yeah, I don't think I just feel like that doesn't make sense to me, how if you haven't damaged it when you were young, you're set up good for life. I don't think that's...
What is that theory coming from? Because that not only they say that, but they also say that before that age of 17, because of that ability for the tendon to regenerate, is what creates a much more stiffer tendon, more elastic tendon, something that performs better. What is it exactly?
When before you're done growing?
Yeah.
I think part of it with the patella, with the patellar tendon, was what was actually going on. It was part of it's a weird thing how the patella bone needs to turn into the patellar tendon. The bone tendon interface can kind of, I don't know. It's a weird thing that needs to develop in a certain manner. And if you overload yourself too much, it doesn't grow right. It like grows in I don't know, in a bad way. But what's going on from 0 to 17? I think it's as simple as this. Is the way I look at tendon is you pretty much just have three things. You have the collagen, which is the stiff ropes within the tendon. You have a gel around the collagen, a proteoglycan gel that allows the tendon to be extendable. And then you have cells. So those are the three things that I look at a tendon is cells, collagen, and the proteoglycan gel. When you're young, when you're just born, your tendon is basically all cells. It's just a ton of cells. I mean, you look at a baby, they can't even crawl. They're just getting into movement, but like they're not jumping. They're not able to put any force. A lot of it too is like their muscles not developed. Their bones are not developed. They can't move like we move. So a lot of their tissues are just cells, and the cells are there and they get pulled on. That's all that happens is they get pulled on through gravity, through movement, and those tendon cells get pulled on and they start to elongate and they start to lay down collagen to make the tendon stiff. That's what they do to make the tendon stiff. Mm-hmm. But you're born and you have a ton of cells, and then you start producing collagen. The percentage of cells goes down, the percentage of collagen goes up. And that keeps happening until you hit like around 17 years old, where your tendon is mostly all collagen, and then you have a few cells. And then as you get older, like 40, 50, 60, you're losing even more cells. It's all of your body. You're losing cells. So like if you're 60 years old, you have a tendon pain, you're like, I'm going to go get stem cells. That kind of makes sense because you're so limited on cells, and the cells are the regenerative capacity. If it's us and we're 30 years old and it's like, I'm going to go get stem cells for my tendon, I kind of question that. I'm like, we have plenty of cells still in our body because we're young. If we were 60, maybe that'd make more sense. Yeah, I think that 0 to 17, you have so many cells that if you can stimulate those cells to be making the tendon stiffer with trillions of repetitions of just pulling on it, that's the best thing you can do. And then as you get older, your capacity to keep growing the tendon gets worse because there's less cells. There's just less things that are going to be building the tendon. So yeah, the sweet spot is when you're a baby and you're growing up to get mature. That is the time to pick whatever activity you're going to do. If it's basketball, well, you don't want to overload yourself, but whatever, just be super active, and that's how you're going to build the tendon. By the time you're 17, your cells are starting to go down. By the time you're 30, they're going down even more. By the time you're 60, they're really going down. And those are the things that are building the tendon. So your building capacity is just getting worse and worse as you get older.
Yeah, so it does make sense that doing more of those fast actions like track and field does at a proper amount of volume is something that during those ages is going to have a much greater effect over the tendon that it's going to have when you do it later in life if you really want to get some adaptation there.
Yeah, and I do think too. I try to like there's that research on tendon stiffness, and then the way I look at it is like it's basically how much collagen is in there, and then how cross-linked the collagen. So like how the linking between the collagen. If you have more linking between the collagen, it's stiffer. A stiff tendon can really get pulled on and not extend too much. So you want stiff tendons. You just want stiff tendons because then you can have a really strong muscle pulling on a stiff tendon, and then that pulls on a bone, and now you can jump 40 inches, or now you can sprint really fast. So you want a stiffness quality to your tendon. What was your question? I had somewhere I was going and I lost it. The track and field. Okay, what I was looking at. Yeah, what I was thinking of is for us now, we have pretty high outputs because we've trained for so long. We have pretty high outputs if we're going to go jump and sprint. If you think of a 10-year-old kid, they have terrible outputs because they're not developed yet. So I'm like, if for us, we can go and do sub-maximal or extensive plyometrics. We can go do a ton of extensive sub-maximal plyometrics. And that's good stimulus to build the tendon because we're getting a volume. We're getting a bunch of pulling on the tendon cells. When you're a young kid, you can go and do maximal effort things, and they're almost sub-maximal because you don't have the ability to do a maximal effort because you're so undeveloped. So they can go and get 6 hours. For us, we can do 10 dunk attempts today. We can do 10 maximum, warm up really well, do 10 maximal effort dunk attempts, and we're kind of shot. and we might actually get some patellar tendon pain tomorrow. It might be kind of stiff. For a kid, they can do 1,000 max effort dunk attempts because their muscle sucks at working. Their muscle sucks. They don't have any outputs. Their central nervous system isn't calibrated to maximally pull on the tendon. So yeah, young kids, I don't think they have extensive and intensive. I think everything for them is extensive versus for us, we have intensive and extensive. So it's like, as we develop more, it gets easier. We can really tap into the tendon because we have outputs. A young kid can't really tap into the tendon. There was research I did cite on this. They did bilateral hopping with the young kids and then people who are mature, and they looked at the excursion of the tendon and the muscle, how much each of them extended. And the young kid had a lot of extendability of the muscle and of the tendon versus the mature person. Their tendon extended, not their muscle. Their muscle was stiff. So their muscle was capable of just pulling really hard, and the tendon was being the elastic rubber band. Versus the kid, their muscle can't even pull, they don't have muscular stiffness, so they can't actually pull on the tendon as much. I think those young kids, a ton of volume of stuff is going to be good. Now, they can run into other issues. Osgood-Schlatter, Sever's disease, Cindy Larson-Johansson at the patellar tendon, the pull of the patellar tendon. So it's like you can still overload these kids, but that's not like an overload of the tendon. That's an overload because they're still developing, and that area where the fusion, the growth of the growth plate is causing some issue there that they're doing too much. They need to scale back. But those are still even rare. But yeah, that's the time. That's the time. Everything they're doing is extensive when you're very young.
Yeah. So you do is much less intense, relatively or overall. Than
Because they can't
when you're an adult.
Unless you're making them jump off like a 5-foot box for many reps, but you're not.
But your tendon is also much more capable of like regenerating and readapting.
It is, and I think it's also much less stiff. It's way less stiff because it hasn't had the time to build. So if they do a motion, it's not. I think they have more. You know, when you go for a dunk attempt and you get like a flat tire, your legs just kind of give out and you don't jump. I think that's when the tendon is just like, I'm not going to be stiff right now. I'm just going to be compliant. I'm just going to roll through and you're going to like run into the wall or something. I'm not going to work right now. And I think young kids, there's a lot more of that. Like we can drop off a 5-foot box and land stiff. A young kid drops off a 5-foot box and they tumble. They roll through it because they don't want to have a stiff tendon in that moment. They don't even have the capacity for that. Their tendon is like too extendable and elastic because it's filled with cells and it's filled with the proteoglycan gel. I think they'd have more cells, more gel, less collagen. They don't have the capacity to be stiff. They don't have the ability to do the intensive things. And they get that ability. It just takes many years.
And that's also probably the reason why you don't see a lot of like tendon tears during the early ages.
Yeah, you never do. You see like avulsion injuries. They can, but that's a different thing. It's not a tendon thing. Like we could rupture a tendon. They just don't have the capacity for it. They don't have the capacity for rupturing tendon like we do later.
Talking about isos, why, or if they are, why are isometric superior to any other slow contraction method, like an eccentric or like a tempo work?
For a tendon? Are they superior? That is, I would question if they are or not. I love isometrics because the people that come to me are in pain. If you have moved down, if you go down and up with the motion, there's a little bit of rate of loading of the tendon, which can kind of set off a tendon. Because anytime you add speed, it's more stress on the tendon. So I just get on a leg extension or get on an isometric and hold. So there's no rate of loading. You can do an isometric where you jerk it, and now you're getting a big rate of loading. But I'm talking about just holding an isometric. You're getting the muscle to pull on the tendon. You're getting a clean length change of the tendon, which is stimulating the cells to kick out collagen, reorienting the tendon in a healthy manner. So I like it in that sense, and that's all it is you're just pulling on the tendon. You're straining the tendon. You can get the same if you're doing an eccentric. You can get the same if you're doing a slow lift. The same time. It's just that now there's more variables, and you're going through ranges of motion where if you're talking like patellar tendon and you're going to do a squat exercise, if you're doing a squat, you could get to a very deep position and that could be compressing, the patella can be compressing on the patellar tendon, and that could also set off some pain symptoms. So it's like, if we just did a movement where you're in a mid-range position, we kind of get rid of a lot of the compressive loading. There's just less variables to set things off. That's why I like isometrics. But if you're talking about tendons, it's all just about how much you're pulling on it, how much strain you're getting on the tendon. And you can get significant strain on a tendon with an isometric or with a heavy lift. Even like 60%, like there was research on like 60% loaded squats, back squats, causing pretty significant strain on the patellar tendon. The research we read is like 90% plus load is the best way to get tendon stiffness. But I think tendon stiffness comes from you getting strain on the tendon. We can get pretty good strain by just lifting a 60% load. 60% load on that, getting the muscle to whatever work in a way where it's pulling on that tendon.
Yeah.
And that's giving you good adaptation. The more unhealthy your tendon is, I think the worse it's going to respond to super heavy loaded isometrics or super heavy loaded lifting. So erring on the side of lighter stuff is still getting strain on the tendon, and then a person could progress that like more slowly. But I wouldn't say isometrics are superior to anything else. The tendon, all the tendon knows is that it's getting strained or that it's not getting strained.
Yeah, it's just easier to load when you have pain and you have to go through range of motion. Like a lot of people will complain, if you talk to any athlete, they would rather do isometric. So it's easier, less demanding, less energy. Also, if you're doing a local, like open chain exercise, like a leg extension, they feel it better. They feel it more. Like it's an easier overall exercise to do. And I feel like you can also, even if you're doing some kind of movement, concentric or eccentric on a leg extension, you're only going to be able to put so much tension on the muscle and the tendon, right? Like if you're doing an isometric position, that's when you can actually reach the maximum voluntary contraction or the maximum amount of force you can put through that joint.
Yeah, and also the tendon only knows strain, and it's like if you're doing a leg extension and your leg is completely extended, your starting position is like there's no strain on the tendon because it's at a joint angle where it's like there's no starting. The tendon can be pulled on or it can be slack. So like the tendon can be like a slack rope where it's actually bent, like the collagen has this crimp angle. And if you just extend your knee, your tendon is slack and crimped. But if you go to like a mid-range position, now your tendon is already strained. So then you can hold that with a leg extension. You can get the quad to work really hard, and that angle is just straining the tendon. But if you go up and down, it's almost like that upper range where you're extending the knee. I'm like I think you're decreasing tendon strain. So it's like you have a whole range of motion where it's like, sure, you're fatiguing the muscle, but are you just like laying off the tendon now in that position? What you could just go to the middle position and get 30, if you're doing a 30-second iso, you get 30 seconds of pure strain. But what if you took 30 seconds and you went all the way down and all the way up? Is like now maybe you're only getting 15 seconds of tendon strain.
Yeah.
So we could get 30. And then also when you're doing, I think of like a calf raise, when someone really has, because when you have a tendon pain, a chronic tendon pain, or any type of tendon pain, the brain always gets involved and it wants to shut down the associated muscle. So it makes the muscle weaker. It makes it smaller if it's been there for a long time. And if you're doing up and down reps, you can get this weird like shakiness, like it's not clean. They're not clean repetitions because that muscle doesn't work as well. So if you do an isometric, you can hold the position and sure, you might get some shakings, but like you can feel the muscle. You can really feel the muscle and get a good contraction of the muscle. And it's just a bit harder when you have to go up and down, when you have those really bad tendons. The same with patellar tendon is like, some people, when you do up and down reps, is like the upper position can really be an issue, which you'd think there's really not much strain. But the patellar tendon has a fat pad behind it. It's like sewed in with a fat pad. And when you extend the knee, that can kind of pinch the fat pad. And a lot of people have symptoms with the fat pad. I think they go hand in hand, patellar tendon pain and fat pad issues. So it's like you want to avoid setting off the fat pad, just go to mid-range. Mid-range is just so good for tendons in general, for everything. So like holding a mid-range isometric gets rid of a lot of the issues you could get if you're having them with full range of motion reps.
Yeah, I feel like with any dynamic exercise, like you're saying too, there's going to be, the muscle is going to fatigue quicker. The quicker the muscle fatigues, the less force you're going to be able to produce to the muscle, the less tension you're going to put on the tendon. overall you're just going to be able to do less.
Yeah, which is like, depends on the person. Some people, you want to get a lot of tendon strain. And some people, you get too much tendon strain, it sets off their tendon, and it's like, we should have maybe done less tendon strain. Now, like, for example, if I did a guy with patellar tendon pain, I guess one story, a guy with patellar tendon pain, I give him he was doing 45-second leg extension isometrics. Mid-range, which is getting a lot of compression, no fat pad issues, 45-second leg extension isometrics. He had patellar tendon pain for the longest time. Quad muscles wasted away. It's super weak. He does that. Next day, tendon is blown up. It's blown up for like a week. Worse, way worse. And I'm thinking like, this is good strain on the patellar tendon, 45 seconds. It's not too heavy of a load. And I'm like, it's too much. That's all it was it was too much load for his patellar tendon because it had never been loaded like that in so long. So I gave him 2-minute isometrics. Do 2 minutes on the leg extension instead of 45 seconds, which means the load is way less. He might be lifting 100 pounds for 45 seconds. Now he has to lift 50 pounds. And I just gave him 2 minutes because I still want his muscle to get trained. If I said 45 seconds, so 45 seconds, he's doing 100 pounds. If I just said, sorry, I'm trying to figure this out. He did 45 seconds. He was doing 100 pounds. If I just said, let's go 45 seconds, but do 50 pounds, I don't think there's not a training stimulus for his muscle because it's too easy. Like, what are we doing? So I just gave him more time frame. I gave him way more time frame, 2-minute hold, so his muscle can fatigue, but it's laying off the tendon because the tendon is not straining as much. The tendon is going to strain more if the muscle is getting more torque. But muscle doesn't produce more torque as it fatigues. It produces less. So it's like, let's just go on the lighter end of things. And he did that. I just gave him a sequence of like week after week. Like week 1, do 2-minute holds. Week 2, do 90-second holds. Week 3, I progressed it a little slower than that. And the dude got better. The dude's knee got better. But it's like, initially, it was just too much strain for the tendon. So, yeah, we're always trying to chase tendon strain to get it to adapt. But some people have such a bad tendon where even we need to lessen the strain even more. So like BFR, I've kind of hated on BFR. I'm just not a fan of BFR because the load is going, the point of BFR, you lift a lighter load and you get a stimulus out of it. BFR can be really good for a very bad tendon that doesn't respond to 30 to 45 second isometrics because it's just too much tendon strain. You can do BFR or you could just do a longer isometric to get the muscle to fatigue. So yeah, that's a rare case. A lot of people do well with 30 to 45 second isometrics with a bad tendon, but you have the people that have such a bad tendon, they have to go even lighter.
Yeah. I also want to ask go back about tendinopathy, but before we go there and talking about isos still, so there's this thing now, right? You have guests in your podcast also now with a little bit more the experience that I have doing isometrics and stuff. We talk about the 30 or 45 second isometrics, like the whole 5 sets of 45 seconds that was talked on the research. But then there's also been guests on your podcast talking about less amount of time because when you hold it for so long, there's not enough tension during the rest of the time that you're holding it and doing 3 to 5 second isometrics. What's the reasoning? Because, I mean, you pretty much went over it right now with everything, but what is the reason behind? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse?
I think it's better for... yeah, it depends on the health of the tendon. If you got a very unhealthy tendon, I think you could really set it off with the super heavy isos because you're straining. A very unhealthy tendon doesn't like to be strained, doesn't like to be pulled on excessively. That's what's going to set it off. So if you did a 3 to 5 second iso with someone who has a very bad tendon, I would just think you're going to set it off even worse. So that's where 30 to 45 seconds fits in. It works for mostly all people with bad tendons. You get a big muscular stimulus. And just think of these chronic tendon pains. A big thing you're trying to get rid of is the brain is messing up with loading that joint. So like, let's get rid of this brain inhibition and like overactivation, this weird stuff that's going on. And you get that by working the associated muscle. So let's just get that muscle to get trained and get fatigued. And you can get that with 30 to 45 seconds. You can also get it with 3 to 5 seconds, but the 3 to 5 seconds is just so much tendon strain where it's like too much. So I'll just look at a progression where I'm like, you have an unhealthy tendon, do the 30 to 45 second, follow a rehab process where you get that tendon really healthy. And then you could actually just start working the time frame down. Because if you get down to the 3 to 5 second iso, you're you're really straining on that tendon, and the cells are going to respond in a way where they're going to make the tendon even stiffer than you could get from the 30 to 45 second isometric. I just play with it a little bit here and there. I do it more so for Achilles for myself because it's just like way more time efficient to do sets of like 3 seconds than it is to sit there for 30 to 45 seconds. It just takes forever if you do it that way. But yeah, if you have a really sensitive, I've blown up tendons like so often, and I don't want to sit on a 3 second iso. I don't want to sit on a 3 second leg extension. Are you kidding me? Like it is hard enough to do 30 seconds with trying to just feel the muscle burn and not feeling too much in the joint. So I think it just depends on the health of the tendon. But if you have healthy tendons and you want to really get them stiffer and maximize performance, then 3 to 5 second isos are the way to go. Maybe 3 years ago when I first got into Keith Barr's stuff, I thought 30 to 45 was the way to go because he talked about stress relaxation within the tendon. He talked about tendon creep, but tendon creep, like the tendon slowly getting long. I don't think, you can see that when you take a tendon out of the human body and you attach a weight to it and it just slowly creeps, but that's not happening in the human body. In the human body, the only way to get the tendon to creep is getting the muscle to pull on it. The muscle pulls on the tendon, and then over time, the tendon creeps and gets longer. But also, as you are pulling with the muscle over time, your muscle gets worse at pulling on the tendon because it gets fatigued. It is not capable of pulling as hard. So it's like tendon creep is almost like it does happen in the tendon, but it doesn't happen in a human body because the muscle gets worse. Unless you could find a way where your muscle gets better at pulling after 10 seconds, but that's not a
contradiction.
Yeah, it's not a thing. So I think the tendon creep happens in the first like 5 seconds because that's when the muscle's really working. So like 5 seconds, you're good on tendon creep. The thing that I look, that's just the way I look at why 30 to 45 seconds is so good, is we're trying to fatigue the muscle, get the brain to activate the muscle again, and then you pull on the tendon a little bit in a healthy way. But those really bad tendons, they don't like to be pulled on way too much.
Yeah. So like those tendons that are a little bit more used to load. So maybe if you're talking about athletes that are used to being on the court a lot, maybe they are able to handle those 3 to 5 seconds, and they might get a little bit more out of it than doing the 45 seconds. Even though they might still get a lot, because you still see athletes that they handle the court, but then when they get into something slow, like an iso or like a eccentric contraction, they can't even bend the knee. Like it's impossible for them. Mm-hmm. So you might need to do those, like even 2 minutes that you're talking about, they might benefit more from that.
Yeah. And I mean, you'll always know, like if you want to try the short ones, you try them, and then if they feel good the next day, they're feeling well, like they don't have more pain, they don't have a spike in pain, you're good to go. You can keep using them. But I'm kind of looking at, I think they're, you know how we can do like long-term periodization where you take someone in an off season and let's say your off season just started, it's like we could start blocking them and say, let's do strength endurance for a little bit, then let's do hypertrophy for a little bit, then let's do strength, then power, then speed. We can challenge that all we want, but that way of building up qualities over time, and then you reach a peak. And I think if you talk about 3 to 5 second isometrics, what do you need to really get the most out of 3 to 5 seconds? You need a muscle. You need a really good muscle, a muscle that probably has all of these capabilities of endurance and hypertrophy and strength and power, and maybe not power and speed. That's like a different thing. But you need a muscle that's capable of pulling really hard. And it's like if you take a young kid, like right now, if you took like a 18-year-old kid that has no lifting experience and you went and made him do a 5 second iso, is his muscle even capable? Does it even have the coordination to pull on a tendon where you're going to get significant strain? I don't think it does. So it's like, that's kind of like more of a quote unquote advanced method. Why would you use it with someone who's so inexperienced with lifting? Let's do longer things. We can like the idea with 1x20. It's the same idea with 1x20. Let's take a young kid that has no experience and do the basic things. If they do 1x20 and now they can back squat 315 pounds for 20 reps. We never needed to do anything super heavy in advance. They didn't need that in the first place. Why would we do singles? Why would we do singles with a young kid that doesn't know anything? So it's almost like you need to build up all these qualities in the first place before you can even get anything out of the most advanced, which is the 3 to 5 second ISO.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it makes sense. So we know that very heavy isomer because of the pull from the muscle. But we also know that very fast. What is the difference between those two types of strain? I mean, we cover a little bit, but so people understand what the difference between the strain that you get when you do an iso and the strain that you get on the tendon when you do a fast action.
Yeah. Okay. So this was I have never found an answer for like 5 years. I did a podcast with Hazel Screen on she's like the main researcher on the proteoglycan gel within the tendon, the interfascicular matrix. And I'm just trying to figure out the mechanisms of the tendon, the mechanics of how things are working. And her stuff is still, she's spent, I don't know, she probably spent her whole life into this. I love all of her work. The conversation I had with her, I need to do another one because I have so many more questions after that. But she's looking at the mechanics of a tendon, and it's like, I think it does explain the differences with a slow and a fast. So she gave, I think I asked her on the show, I thought she was going to give me a long explanation of what's happening when you move slow and what's happening when you move fast. Because they're both strained. They're both elongating the tendon. That's all it is a length change of the tendon. And that length change can set off a tendon to make it painful, or the length change can be an adaptive positive stimulus to make the thing stiffer, you know, so you're always like doing either or. But I think she started talking about slow. I'm like, what's going on when you do a slow contraction? You hold something. She said first you're holding, the collagen uncrimps, so it gets linear and gets pulled. So the tendon is getting this linear pull on it. But as you hold after like a few seconds, some of the collagen goes back to the crimped state. It actually relaxes. So it's like you're getting relaxation with the tendon because it's a low energy state. The tendon doesn't want to be pulled on. It wants to go back to a low energy, like a relaxation state. And that happens because of the proteoglycan gel. It's kind of this twisting and sliding of the internal workings of the tendon. It can twist and slide to get back to a state where it can kind of just hold the contraction without having this big pull on everything. So you get twisting and sliding when you hold, and that's the type of strain. So if you have pockets that are unhealthy with the tendon or damaged with the tendon, they can get loaded because the tendon is sliding and rotating, and you can get a linear pull on that area. Versus if you do something fast, there's not much sliding and rotating and twisting it's just a sharp yank on the tendon. It's a sharp pull, an elastic pull on the tendon. So the areas that are unhealthy, I don't think they're really going to get loaded. I think they're just going to get shielded or like compressed. So the only difference is when you're moving slow, if let's take a number and say, if you get a 10% strain on the tendon, it's getting a 10% length change. If you get that from something slow, you're getting a bunch of sliding and rotating within the tendon. If you get that from something fast, you're just getting a yank on the tendon. It's just yanking the tendon end to end. So it's not like a healthy stimulus, but the slow stuff could be a healthy stimulus.
Gotcha.
And this is why the slow stuff is usually not going to set off a tendon to make it more painful, because the tendon can orient itself in a way where it wants to be loaded. If you go and do something fast, it doesn't have the choice to reorient itself. It just has to get pulled on. So I think that's why the fast stuff can set it off. But yes, they are both strained. They're both a strain of the tendon, but the strain is very different.
Is that part of the viscoelastic properties of the tendon?
That's what it is. So like
what it is.
The slow is viscous. It's like a fluid. It's a fluid movement in the tendon. The fast is elastic, like an elastic rubber band where it just snaps. It just gets pulled and snaps back. That's the elastic response.
Yeah.
Elastic is tough because there's way too many definitions of what elastic means.
Yeah.
A non-elastic thing doesn't an inelastic thing doesn't stretch at all. And an inelastic thing also would break if you stretch it. Yeah. And it's like the tendon is neither, but things can be more or less elastic. So there's so much going on. So I just, for the sake of simplicity here, is like the slow thing is also elastic because elastic means that it stretches and it goes back to its, it goes back. So the slow movement or the hold, that's elastic because it's getting a length change and it's going back. But the fast thing is more elastic because it's I guess it's happening faster. But anyways, for the sake of simplicity, the slow thing is viscous and the fast thing is elastic.
Gotcha. The other thing, so let's go back a little bit. I should have started with this, but like for somebody that doesn't really understand the mechanism of a tendinopathy, what is it in a simple explanation? What is it that goes on within the tendon that creates a tendinopathy?
Uh, yeah. So it's just you. What is going? So now that there's too many things, let's just take it like an athlete. Oh, because you have the bucket of metabolic issues, like people that are very unhealthy later in life, they can get a tendinopathy by being diabetic or having high cholesterol or high blood pressure because that's bad for the structure of the tendon and it can get pathological and unhealthy. But generally, why does a tendinopathy develop is because you just exceeded the load tolerance, you exceeded the load that the tendon can handle. And that's usually going from just doing too much too soon. Have 3 months where you've been chilling on the couch and then I'm going to go play basketball for 2 hours. And then the next day your patellar tendon hurts or your Achilles tendon hurts. You did too much too soon. The tendon was not accustomed to that type of loading. So now you have a tendinopathy. But yeah, the sequence that they say it happens is you have a normal healthy tendon. So the whole tendon is just like a bunch of collagen ropes surrounded by the gel. And you could get an ultrasound, you could get an MRI, and that thing is just completely healthy and looks fine. It's the muscles turning into the tendon is turning into the bone, and it's just a very healthy structure. You start to overload that thing. You overload it, and you overload it, and you cause the first idea they have is when you overload a tendon, you do too much too soon. You cause damage to the proteoglycan gel. So like there's the gel within the tendon, the interfascicular matrix. You cause damage there, and that could swell up. You have immune cells in there that can kick out nasty chemicals, and the brain senses this and puts pain in that tendon. And then whenever you load that tendon, the brain puts more pain there. That's the first route, is you overloaded the tendon, the proteoglycan gel, or the interfascicular matrix. It's not the collagen within the tendon. It's the fluid. It's the gel substance. That is overloaded, and it's very sensitive, so you get pain symptoms. What you could do is just take a few days of rest, and it's usually just going to go back to normal, and you're going to be fine again. And then you can go back and compete, do your sport. But the thing is, you should take the lesson that you've done too much. So let's do a little bit less and just try to progress from there. Listen to how the tendon's feeling. But usually you overload the proteoglycan gel, the interfascicular matrix, and that athlete just keeps overloading. And then the idea is you start to tap into the collagen fascicles and you start damaging the collagen fascicles. And then you could get more of like they'll call it a degenerative type tendon, where you've done some damage to the collagen, which is not a thing you want to do because the collagen is more of a static structure. It took a long time to build. It's also going to take a long time to heal if you damage it. Versus the proteoglycan gel is an active fluid substance. If you overload that, it comes back real quickly. That's kind of the sequence of the tendinopathy. You have a normal tendon, you overload it. You've overloaded the gel. The gel is going to go back and get healthy again if you give it a little bit of time. But a lot of people just keep overloading. They tap into the collagen gets damaged, and now you have a tendon that is going to be very hard to get back to like a normal, healthy state. But you know what? Tons of people are walking around with real unhealthy, damaged collagen in their tendons, and they're getting along just fine. So, and a lot of those things stick around. Like you could damage it today, and you have really bad pain. Like this happened to me. I tore my lat tendon. I'm getting patellar tendon pain off and on because I'm dunking a ton, but I just stopped playing basketball and dunking, so my patellar tendon has no pain at all. I'm fine because I haven't dunked. I haven't done anything in like many months, and then I go dunk one day. I did one dunk, I think, and I blew up my patellar tendon so bad. But it's like I had 6 months of a degenerative, unhealthy patellar tendon, but I didn't know it because I wasn't loading the thing in a fast manner, you know? And then I go do it and I blow it up. So it's like a lot of people are just walking around with past damage to their tendon. They just don't know it's there because they're not loading it like they used to. And then they go back to load it like they used to, and it blows up again. But it's simple. So, you just take that and you rest a little bit. You probably do some slow stuff for health. Try to progress better into what you're doing, and then you're usually going to be good to go.
So was it the whole idea about that you can have damage within the tendon, but you are not experiencing pain? Let's say you're an athlete and you actually have a damaged tendon, where an image will show that there's a damage to collagen fibers, but there's no pain. You also have talked to me about before that could also be bad even though there's no symptoms, that could be bad because it can lead to any other issues on the future.
Yeah, like a rupture. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the idea. That's the idea with the rupture is you have research that a lot of people that rupture don't have pain beforehand. They don't have pain in their tendon beforehand. So it's almost like an adverse pain response because you should have pain there. If you're loading your tendon, you should have pain in that tendon if it's compromised. But your body doesn't put pain there for some reason, and you're working on a compromised tendon, and then that thing snaps. So it's like Colin Griffin called it silent tendinopathy, which I think is perfect. It's a silent tendinopathy that's there. You don't know it's there because you have no symptoms, and then you go and you're active and you do everything you used to do, and then you go rupture that tendon. Because a healthy tendon will not rupture. A healthy tendon is so strong that you could put such crazy loads on it, it's not going to tear. But an unhealthy tendon, you can't put crazy loads on it. It's going to tear. You just don't know that it's unhealthy unless you get it imaged. But there are problems with going to get it imaged. Yeah, and that damage could have been set up a decade prior, and then it was just silent for a decade. And then you change loads suddenly. You don't do something for many months. You go and play basketball one day, and pop, there goes your Achilles, or there goes your patella. Like this guy I just said at LA Fitness, he tore his Achilles, like just out of nowhere. He was going for a steal. He hopped up, and then he tried to plant and push off, and the thing just popped. He tore his other Achilles, like, I don't know, 3-5 years ago, his other Achilles. And this Achilles, he didn't have pain. He didn't have symptoms there, and the thing just popped. He also took a bunch of time off and everything. But I'm like, that, you just know that tendon was unhealthy to begin with. And he did a seemingly like harmless move. He hopped up and he tried to accelerate, and the thing popped. And the only thing I can think of why did that tendon pop is because it was unhealthy. He just didn't know it.
Yeah. So it's probably safe that anybody in general should load slow and heavy, no matter if you're an athlete or not. But is it possible that athletes too are walking around with a damaged tendon they don't know, and that puts them in a compromised position at some point?
It is, yeah. And that is the idea, is if it is really compromised, the slow, heavy stuff is the way to reorient the tendon. Like, get the tendon to slide and rotate around one another, get those pockets that are damaged to receive a healthy load that's telling, because the areas that are damaged, like the load you want the tendon to receive is like a linear load. Like the Achilles tendon gets pulled end to end, the patellar tendon end to end. The areas of damage are, you could look at the cells and they're not elongated cells. They're like fattened. They're fattened cells. So it's almost like this area is just a pocket that's unloaded. It's not good at receiving linear load. How do you get linear load in that area? You got to do something slow and heavy so that the other areas around it can kind of relax, and then you can receive it there. If you only do something fast, I don't think that happens.
So following up with that too, there's a whole debate and idea about the donut hole and like the area of the tendon that's damaged, that cannot go back to where it was before. And there's also the idea that you can just work the area around the tendon that's healthy, and that just make that better, and that's going to make the function of the tendon better. But there's also the idea that you can reorient those fibers, just as you were mentioning right now. Which one is it, or it doesn't matter?
I think just using logic, I'd be like, I think both happen. Like, why do we got to pick one? Like, if there's damage to the tendon, it's going to lay down more collagen as a response because it knows it's compromised, so it's going to try to get bigger. And I guess you see that with chronic tendon pain. Like, some of them you can actually see more thickness of the tendon, like it's actually gotten significant, so it has more collagen, more healthy collagen in it around the area that's damaged. Then you have Keith Barr, but there's been other imaging studies where you've seen, and then even anecdotes of people that are doing ultrasounds, they'll see the pockets of degeneration change and get healthy again. So it's like you have both happening. So I've even speculated too, is a way to get a superhuman tendon to cause tendon pain in your tendon so that you have a pocket that's bad and then it gets even bigger and then you heal the pocket that's bad. So now you have like an even bigger and healthier tendon. Could that be a thing, But I don't think that's a safe thing, because once you get tendon pain, your cells remember the tendon pain forever, and they're so easily put back in the state of pain. Not the state, but the state where they I guess have a phenotype for inflammation and for this immune response. So the cells remember the past pain you were in, and it's so easy to go back there. But I think both is happening. If you develop a tendon pain, which means you're going to have a pathology, a bad spot within your tendon. It's going to get bigger and lay down more collagen around that. But then all the Keith Barr work and the ideas with the viscous properties of tendons, stress relaxation, why would we think that that's not going to receive load again and potentially get healthy? It's just, I think I'm just optimistic. I'm optimistic. And if you don't think that way, then you're probably pessimistic.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of imaging and a lot of people that's talked about that where they do see a trend throughout the year. Like if you see different images of a tendon throughout the year of an athlete, that changes. You can see that the amount of healthy collagen changes throughout the season. So that means that maybe they're laying out new collagen, but they're also regenerating, or that collagen that was unhealthy in the past is healthy now.
Yeah, and I think maybe the anecdotes where those tendons are not laying down more and getting healthy, like you never know what they did. Did they even rehab, or are they just really unhealthy? Are they in the metabolic camp of having chronic high blood sugar, high cholesterol, obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol? Like, are they in that camp? And if you're in that camp, your tendon healing sucks. So it's like, if you are just generally in good health, you're going to be be set up to heal your tendon, heal the pockets that are bad within your tendon.
Yeah. Going to another topic a little bit, it's still about tendons, but I think there's a lot of confusion in the way that people approaches tendinopathy, and you have an athlete that has some kind of knee pain. You've talked about a range of things that could be, and how and why a lot of the times it's not a tendinopathy. Can you explain a little bit of, maybe first, how would you know that it's a tendon issue, and also what other things could be, and what population could not really be affected by tendinopathy, or is harder for them to be?
Yeah. Okay. So I've really dug into this deep for the front of the knee. I haven't done it for the Achilles. There's a lot of things that could go on in the Achilles. Then you have some weird things. Like I think shoulder tendinopathy can kind of radiate pain. One of the rotator cuff tendons can radiate pain somewhere else. But let's just talk about the knee, and it does kind of pertain to everything else. The tendon pains are only going to happen at the I forget how to say the term, enthesis, where the tendon and the bone meet. So like kind of where there's this wraparound effect. That's where the tendon pains are going to be. So if you're talking about, I think I have patellar tendon pain, it's only going to be at right underneath the patella bone where the tendon and the bone meet, or it's going to be at the tibia and the tendon where those meet, or it's going to be at the quad where the quad tendon meets the patella. So it's like these are all spots where the tendon's meeting the bone. Which is often not the case. It's patellofemoral pain. It's just general kneecap pain behind the kneecap, pain around the kneecap. And it's so simple. You can distinguish too just by the location of the pain. Where does it hurt? And it's like, if it only hurts right under the kneecap, I'm going to be thinking patellar tendon. If it hurts around the kneecap, it's a widespread area, I'm thinking patellofemoral pain. You could also, there's other structures like the fat pad, but that's pretty obvious because that's a super sharp pain when the knee is extending. Doesn't go hand in hand with the patellar tendon. It doesn't have the same signs and symptoms as patellar tendon. You can have a plica pain, which is very rare, but you kind of get a snapping effect when you're bending the knees, and it's just real uncomfortable, kind of a burning sensation. What are other ones at the front of the knee? Like you get a patella fracture. Yeah, there are a few others, but anyways, those are the major ones. And I think the easiest way is like, what is the location? It's going to be a tiny spot where the tendon meets the bone. That's a tendon pain. There are always going to be exceptions, but this is like speaking. This is going to pertain to like 99% of them. And then it's going to be pain with increased loading. So if you load the tendon with a 10-pound goblet squat, oh, that feels fine. If you go up to like a 200-pound goblet squat, okay, now it hurts a little bit more. Like that's loading the tendon, it's straining the tendon more. You're thinking that. Then speed. So like if you increase the speed, if you do a body weight squat, that's not a whole lot of strain on the tendon. If you do a vertical jump, you're probably going to set off the tendon, but it has to be in that pain location. It has to be in that one spot, because these can all work for patellofemoral pain. You can get more patellofemoral pain as you increase load, but it's going to be a widespread pain. You can get more patellofemoral pain as you jump. It's going to be a widespread pain. The weird thing with patellar tendon is it warms up. So it warms up and you feel better as you're active. With patellofemoral pain, you might not get a warm-up effect. It might just be a little bit like annoying through the whole thing, through the whole competition you're doing. So yeah, there is a confusion. I don't think it matters a whole lot though, because rehab is rehab. If someone has knee pain, anterior knee pain, Greg Lehman, I love listening to Greg Lehman. He just calls it kneecap pain. All pains in front of the knee, kneecap pain. It's like, oh, you just got kneecap pain. Let's rehab it. Because that's what it is. The acute stage matters. So talking with Rich Willie, people talk to me about what should I do patellofemoral pain versus patellar tendon. And I just always say, go listen to my podcast with Rich Willie, because he had an hour where he explained it so well about what to do. And if you have the patellar tendon pain, you want to start loading the quad heavy right away. Day one, load the thing heavy right away, because it's gotten smaller, it's gotten weaker. Start straining the tendon. If you have patellofemoral pain and you go after quad immediately, you're probably just going to make the patellofemoral pain worse. So you can let the patellofemoral joint settle down a little bit, work on the calf and the hamstring and the glutes and the hip internal work on everything else, but loading the patellofemoral joint super hard, which comes from super high quad loading. But then you want to start to go into quad loading. So it's like early on, patellar tendon rehab is going to be high quad loading and then addressing everything else. Patellofemoral, you're kind of laying off the quad loading. But as you get out of that acute stage, they're going to look the same, because you want good knees. You want good knees, you're going to address everything around the knees. So rehab pretty much looks the same with a lot of the musculoskeletal conditions. It's just early on, it helps to know what you're dealing with, so you can get the initial pain symptoms.
Yeah. I think too, like one of the things that I realize is that when you have somebody with patellofemoral pain and you try to do isos for a day, and let's say those 5 by 45 seconds, they do get more pain afterwards, and they get more pain the day after. If you try to load the hamstrings, you try to load some internal rotation on the hip or the femur over the hip and some kind of RDL or calf or glute bridge or something like that, they do feel better right after, just because they forget that awareness of the knee pain and they're loading other structures a little bit more. And I think you told me that too. Like if you want to see if it's tendon, do the ISO protocol, see how it feels right after, or maybe like a few minutes after or the day after. It should get better. If it doesn't get better, if it triggers it a little bit more, then it's probably not that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess interacting with people online is like troubleshooting their rehab. I've done a few patellofemoral, and it seems like patellar tendon, like stage 1 isometrics, I like to do them every single day, because the brain, I want to get rid of the brain inhibition, and I want to get the quad to activate again. And that just works better if you're loading it every day. And tendon can be loaded every day too. So loading every day, sometimes like twice a day, can be good. Patellofemoral joints, I think that responds well to days off. Taking a day off of loading the knee. But with patellar tendon, you don't really need that. You can load every single day. You can load every single day, lifting, isometrics, and then when you get to stage, like a store and release stage, you can do jumping, landing, all that stuff on one day, isometrics the next day, lifting the next day. You can just keep loading that tendon day after day. Patellofemoral joints, for some reason, I think it just does well when you take away knee loading for a day. Give it a day of complete rest and do a bunch of other things when you get back to the knee loading. I don't know the reason why. I guess one day maybe I'll figure that out.
I think another thing you said before is that patellar tendinopathy is something you have to earn. So like, if you're not athletic enough, if you're not putting enough strength through the tendon when you're playing the sport, you're probably not suffering patellar tendinopathy. Do you think this is something that still remains true? Because one of these that happens sometimes with people that I find, they say, oh, I got patellar tendinopathy, and they're just weak as piss, and just you can tell that it can be that. Do you think that's it, or you think that those people can still get pain from their patella?
Yeah, there probably are exceptions to it. I would think the kids who do have it, who would get like patellar tendon, they're probably immature. They might, the Osgood-Schlatter you get anyone can get Osgood-Schlatter if you're a kid. Okay. But then you also have a similar Osgood-Schlatter thing at the kneecap above, or right on the kneecap, Cindy Larson-Johansson, but it's not a growth plate thing. It's something weird, because I guess you don't have a growth plate there or something along those lines, but it's similar to like an apophysitis injury. So anyone can get those. So if it's a very unathletic kid, I'd be like, you have apophyseal injury, not a tendon injury. But if it's like a 20-year-old who has patellar tendon and they're just like a terrible athlete and they can't jump, and like I think you probably know, because to tap into patellar tendonitis, you need a good quad. You need a super strong quadricep to even pull on that tendon enough to get it, to even pull on it to cause enough damage. It's like the higher you jump, the more damage you're doing the more potential damage you can do to your tendon. If you jump in 20 inches, you're not really straining the tendon in a point where it's going to damage that tendon. If you're jumping 40 inches, you have the capacity to really yank on that tendon. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense how you could develop a patellar tendon pain if you're a terrible athlete. You haven't earned the right to get it. But those people, maybe when they did get it, maybe it was 5 years ago and they've just gotten so detrained, Maybe they got it 5 years ago and now they've just turned into such a poor athlete where it's like they've lost all their capabilities. I don't know. But I don't, there probably are exceptions, but in general, it's like the people with patellar tendon pain are the ones who are good athletes.
Because you've also talked about powerlifters sometimes getting maybe this was quad tendinopathy, but
no, it's patellar. They get patellar too, yeah. And I think it's compression. I think it's when you're squatting like a powerlifter. I think sometimes they can bounce out of the bottom. That's a lot of load on the patellar tendon. That's a lot of load bouncing out of the bottom of a squat if they have more of an explosive squat. Also, like, your quads are working crazy hard in a squat, so like they're really pulling on that thing. Maybe there's like anabolic steroid use. I had one guy he got multiple X-rays, MRIs, calcification under his patella into the patellar tendon. And when that thing is really calcific and it's sensitive, because you can have calcific that's asymptomatic, but if it's calcific like that, that's kind of a different beast where, you can get it. You can get it from squatting. You can get real bad patellar tendon pain from squatting if it's calcific. And those are real difficult to, this one guy's, I don't even think he's got better. But that's real difficult to manage. And then you have different things. Do I get surgery to try to get the calcification out? Shockwave to try to get it out? I don't know a ton about that. They are rare. But yeah, you can get it from, powerlifters can get it. It's not just the jumpers. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you brought up another topic that I really didn't thought about, so this might extend it a little bit. And this is my dad. My dad had a calcification of the Achilles tendon. We started doing some loading protocols too for him, just like basic stuff. But then he started doing shockwaves. Shockwaves got rid of that, or part of that calcification that was more proximal to the calf, or like a little bit farther away from the heel bone. But then he started doing, I don't know if you know the epi.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
So it's these waves that go through a needle that go right into the tendon. And that actually got, I don't know, through imaging, I actually haven't talked to him about this, but it got rid of the pain completely, of the pain that he was receiving from that calcification after whatever amount of sessions. I think it was 10 sessions of, 5 sessions of shockwave and then 3 sessions of epi. And that actually got rid of it. I don't know if you heard of it, about it, or I don't know.
Yeah, now you bring it up. I've been talking to one on Instagram. One of the main people always talks to me. I don't know if they're the founder or they're just a big proponent of it, about using it. But I kind of looked into the mechanism just one day. I might be mistaken, but it sounded like, so like it's nerve endings. You get pain from the brain, the nervous system, and you could just cut nerves. You could just cut nerves and you're not gonna have pain. So I don't know if that's what was going on with that thing. So it's like, yeah, if you have tendon pain, let's just sever the connection that's causing pain. But it's like, yeah, you don't have tendon pain, but is the tendon still compromised? Like, if you have pain for a decade, that sucks. And like, maybe you want to get rid of that pain, but at the same time, if you only have pain for a little bit, that pain is good. That pain's trying to tell you something, that you have a problem in this tissue. So, I don't know exactly the mechanism, what that does, but I know shockwave. Yeah, shockwave is supposed to break up calcifications. I think it was created for kidney stones in the first place when shockwave was made. So it's hit or miss though. Like, some people get better, some people get worse pain from it. You got to do multiple sessions. But I don't know. It's a difficult thing. It's like, some people, could they also just get better with progressive loading if they have a bad calcification? You always want to just try the conservative management. Let's try good loading, try to get good metabolic health. and after a few months, see where you're at, and then I think you can start to look at some of those like adjuncts.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that got rid of the calcified tissue. I know the shockwave did. I just don't know if this ended up doing. I know he has no pain now and he's happy. I guess that's what matters at the end of the day, especially with somebody that's not gonna be sprinting or running anywhere.
Well, one of the more harmless ones, it could work for mid portion too, is the heel inserts. You could put a heel wedge in. You put a heel wedge in and just think of the strain on a tendon. You're straining the whole tendon less because you have a heel wedge in. And if all your dad wants to do is walk around and garden and do whatever he does, is like, you could just put a heel wedge and he's fine. And then if they're also taller, and for guys maybe they want to be a little bit taller, so maybe it's a good thing. Like, it was made for insertional to get rid of the compression, but it also there's some research that works for mid portion because just think of it, you're just straining the tendon less because you're kind of up on your toes and you're not getting a large length change of the tendon.
Yeah. And then the last thing, and they should go back to the isometrics, but anyways, maybe I'll edit it, maybe I won't. But when we're talking about using different type of isometrics, if we differentiate between yielding isometrics and overcoming isometrics, just for whoever's out there and maybe doesn't understand what the difference is, yielding will be a hold where the weight is going to kind of fall. If we're talking about a leg extension, is falling over your tibia and you just fold in it. The difference between that and overcoming will be that you're actually pushing the weight actively. So one of the things that maybe I thought about in the past is, because we know that and I don't know if this is true again, but the mechanism on the jump where you decelerate your body weight and you change that direction from eccentric to concentric, let's say that on a jump, that's what triggers the tendon the most. If there's any reasoning to believe that maybe if we use the same intensity, let's say that is 70 or 80% of maximum voluntary contraction, but the difference is that we are actually holding the weight against pushing it, there would be a difference? Do you think there would be a difference there?
On the tendon, no. I think the only difference would be how you start. If you're doing a yielding iso, it's usually like a more gradual start. It's not a jerk, so it's not a jerky thing. Usually, like overcoming, you're gonna jerk when you do it, you know. And I think that initial jerk, I don't know though. I don't know now. I think that has a potential to have like a different impact on the tendon. But just think, if you're using the same load, and if the force output is the same, the muscle is pulling the same. So I think a yielding and an overcoming are going to be the same on the tendon. But the thing you were getting at with, that's a different, we did talk about that off air. I would need to think about that more because I think the action of a jump and a land are both going to be strain on a tendon. If they are the same strain on the tendon, the same time frame and everything, if we could match all of that, I think it has to be a different type of pull on the tendon. It's going to be the same strain, but just think of a jump. If you go Achilles, your calf is pulling on the Achilles and the Achilles is pulling on the calcaneus, and then you're jumping. When you're landing, it's like the opposite. I guess your heel's not smacking the ground, but it's like the energy's starting in the heel, going to the tendon, and then it's getting dissipated by the muscle. So it's like a reversal thing. I don't know what that would mean for yielding versus overcoming. I think they're probably just way too dissimilar.
Yeah, and I think too, like maybe just that the idea that the portion of the movement when you're decelerating your body weight to change direction to go concentrically, maybe it just has something to do that. On the portion that you decelerate, the eccentric portion, you just produce higher forces, and the peak of force is much higher. And that's it happens during that portion of the time of the movement. It doesn't happen during the propulsive section of the movement. It happens during the eccentric, mostly, not always, but mostly. And maybe that's why it's associated with that, with just more tension, more strain on the tendon.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something I haven't really thought about until you said it like 90 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm going to need to think about that more, but in general, it's just muscle can go eccentric, concentric, isometric, contraction types. Tendon can strain, and that's it. Tendon just stretches.
Yeah, 100%. All right, now we're on 30 minutes. This was great. Best tendon podcast out there for sure. On a Spanish podcast. Let's go.
Thank you.